Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and his immaculate Ahlul Bayt, and his loyal companions. Dear brothers and sisters all around the world, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to yet another edition from series of Quran and Today's Life. In these series of programs, if you have not been already following these programs, we started discussing some points or some concepts from the teachings of Quran. More specifically, teachings of Quran in regard to training our children. The things that we may need in our daily lives, and they are for sure practical points that most of us need them. We have been starting a discussion concerning the things that we should prevent to do, not to do in fact some things in front of our children. Not to do some points and observe doing some of the points in front of other children, and some training points that are very important from the viewpoint of Quran. Sheikh Qasim Muhammadi, Islamic scholar, was helping us in these recent programs with this discussion. Sheikh Qasim, welcome. Assalamu alaikum, and thanks for accepting our invitation to this show.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. I would like to offer my greetings to the respected viewers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, thank you. Among the things that we were to talk about was the effect of shaitan in the personality and characteristic of our children. We were told that to be very careful of the effects of shaitan, because shaitan, we as parents can be some, let's say, helper of shaitan in the training of our children. So we should observe not to be helper of shaitan. We should prevent shaitan from, in fact, interfering in the process of upbringing of our children. What else we should observe in the, important process of bringing up of our children?
The other point that has to be mentioned in this regard is haram provision. Haram provision is so important.
Haram provision, you mean rizq al-haram?
Rizq al-haram. So important in upbringing children, and we have many traditions with regard to this point. And most of the time it is ignored. Sometimes we say, why? Sometimes they ask me, why my child is like this? What did I wrong that my child became like this? And when you go through his life or her life, you see that haram provision is there and had played its role, haram provision.
By haram provision, you mean necessarily, being like a thief or stealing something, or no? There are some other factors here.
No, all the ways that the outcome, okay, or the income could be haram. All the means, okay. So, for example, if whether it is the earnings, okay, or whether it is, as you said, the father is a thief or something, okay. So all the ways that the provision or that the rizq that is eaten or that is used, not just eaten, okay. So sometimes they say, for example, rizq al-haram is just, for example, the bike that we have, okay. For example,
is the provision of someone who, in fact, earns based on the legal rulings, but he doesn't pay khums or zakat? Is this provision also a halal one? Or
yes, the provision.
Is it also a subject of this issue also?
Yes. So as I said, it includes all of the ways that the provision or the outcome or the incomes could be, for example, earned in a haram way. So whether it is earned and the khums of it is not paid, or the zakat of it is not paid, or it is, for example, he earned it or she earned it through a illegal way, or other examples. Okay, so all the haram
are influential in the process of,
okay, that comes to the family and is used and is made use of by children is regarded as a haram provision. Okay, And with regard to this point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a verse, a very beautiful verse in Surah Al-Imran, verse number 37. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regard to to Lady Maryam, salamullahi alayha, says, and describing who Lady Maryam was, says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلَّمَا دَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا زَكَرِيَّا الْمِحْرَابَ وَجَدَ عِنْدَهَا رِزْقًا قَالَ يَا مَرْيَمْ أَنَّى لَكَ هَذَا قالت هو من عند الله إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. Whenever Zakaria came to see her in the chamber, he found her provided with food. And he asked, where has this come from, O Mary? And he said, from God who gives food in abundance and whomsoever he will. Somebody might say that it was a sort of heavenly food that was Lady Maryam was provided
and
with.
Someone may say that Maryam was an exceptional figure at that time.
And we say why Maryam was an exceptional, why Maryam became a sort of exceptional fact, and an exceptional
that
example.
That he received divine provision.
Yeah. So one of the examples, one of the factors actually was this al-rizq al-halal. Okay, so the heavenly provision is not just the provision that is brought about or that came from the skies or from the heavens, okay, down to earth. It is not just this, the heavenly rizq or the rizq that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be my and your earnings as well. If I earn my income
in the case of Maryam, it was for sure. I mean, in the case of Maryam, it was for sure. I mean,
yes, it was like that. But it is not confined to this example. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa taala, I think by this verse, Allah subhanahu wa taala tries to tell us that Maryam was an example. Okay, why? One of the factors, at least, was al-rizq al-halal, was a halal provision. And it's so important, and there are some traditions that I just recite to you and just read you one of them. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, كَسْبُ الْحَرَامِ يَبِينُ فِي الذُّرِّيَّةِ. Haram earning will show itself in offspring. Okay? So it is not, strange that we see a person that is brought up by haram provision to commit sins, okay, committing sins, okay, or committing bad actions or violating law, okay. So it is expectable from such a person that is brought up by haram provision to do such acts. And there are other traditions, but I forgo them, and I would like to go to the next.
Well, up until now, we have understood that there are two important factors here. The first one was concerning the influences of shaitan and the formation of personality and characteristics of our children, and the other one was haram provision. In fact, we have been told to provide our children with a halal provision rather than haram. Okay, we can discuss the other factors, inshallah, after a very short break, and I enjoy. It's really a pleasure and honor that we have you, the respected viewers, to be watching this show, which is a Quranic, in fact, show that relates to the, in fact, information that we may get from Quranic teachings. In fact, concerning the practical points in regard to training of our children. We have been talking about the things that we should observe in our, in fact, process of training our children. Two things were enumerated up until now. Inshallah, we ask Sheikh Qasim to tell us more that what should we not do based on Quranic teachings while we are trying to have, in fact, a Quranic or Islamic upbringing for our children.
Right. The third point that should be regarded and should be taken into consideration is sometimes we see some unpracticing children, unpracticing parents, and the impact of these unpracticing parents on their children.
What do you mean by unpracticing parents?
What does it mean? Actually, I have talked about it a little bit in the previous sessions, but not that much, and inshallah we'll talk about it a little bit more than that. And not practicing or unpracticing parents. Sometimes we see that parents say something to their children, okay? Son, try not to lie. Son, do not do that, okay? That is haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that is haram, okay? Do not do that action or do this action. But when it comes to they themselves, to them, okay, they do not practice it. It's a very common and quick example that we see a lot in our life.
So we as parents should start with ourselves first.
Yeah. For example, we start saying, "O son, do not lie. Lies is a very bad action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like the one who lies." And at the same time, phone starts ringing, okay? And our child or the wife, our wife, for example, picks up the phone, and we start says that I'm not here, and I'm not at home, okay? And he or she, I mean the child, is seeing us, is watching us.
If we are making them tell a lie.
Yeah. So he says, it's a sort of, there's a contradiction. He says, my father, or she says, my father is telling me that telling lie is a haram, is a haram action, is bad. So why is he lying himself? So it might be a good, for example, a good act to do, or at least there are some lies that could be.
In some occasions, it can be a halal.
So these sorts of contradictory actions that we have in our life, that we say something and act against it. These are, I think, destroy the training or the upbringing of our child or children. Okay, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in Surah Baqarah, verse number 44, says, "Ata'muruna an-nasa bil-birri wa tansawna anfusakum." Will you enjoy good deeds on the others and forget your own selves? So it is so important to be practicing Muslims, and after that, telling our children to be practicing. Okay?
This is a very important rule to, in fact, we ourselves be, in fact, practicing rather than asking our children to be practiced. In fact, we should start from ourselves.
Yes, that is the point. So up until now, we have discussed about 3 points that should not be done with regard to training children. The first one was not to the first one, not to let the shaitan to participate into our child's upbringing. Okay, and the second one was,
in fact, halal risk should be coming in the family.
Provision should be avoided, and the third one, that we have to be practicing and not being unpracticing. Okay, because we.
This, I think, this can be, in fact, also be compared to the point that we, in fact, discussed earlier, that we need a very good role model.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, we should be a good role model than being, in fact, a false role model.
Because they are copying everything that they watch.
So all these, in fact, verses that you just touched upon are in one chapter of Quran, maybe, because as we all know that we have plenty of these, training points in chapter of Luqman. Are they all from there, or they are in different parts of the Quran?
Actually, they are in different parts of the Quran, and as you saw, we refer to many verses of the Holy Quran from many surahs. Okay,
but the chapter of Luqman is very famous for this. Training points. What can we catch from this chapter?
But before I get to the chapter Luqman, I would like to refer to the last point that we have here, which is the discrimination between children. And inshallah, I will go to the Surah Luqman. Thank you for reminding me this point. So as the last
you mean this is again another factor
that
should be considered?
The last factor that should not be done with regard to training children, which is discrimination between children.
Not to discriminate
between our children. This is sort of Jahili era tradition, okay? And they used to discriminate between their children. They would kill their daughters, okay, and they would just regard their boys as their children, and this is a sort of Jahili. And unfortunately, we see this actually a modern version of it. Okay, they would kill their daughters, but the version that is the modern version is they do not kill the person Rather, they kill the personality of their daughter, for example.
So it's more dangerous than the
And
previous.
it's more dangerous, yes. And inshallah, I will talk about this a little bit, and then we will go to the Surah Luqman. One of the verses that talks about this discrimination between children is Surah Yusuf, verse number 80. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yusuf, from the tongue of brothers of Yusuf, okay, they start talking with their parents, with their father, and say, وَإِذْ قَالُوا لَيُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ إِنَّ أَبَانَا لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Surely Joseph and his brother are dearer to our father than we, said his half-brothers. Even though we are well-knit band, our father is surely in the right. I'm not saying that the Holy Prophet Ya'qub was discriminating between his children, yet there was a sort of feeling amongst the children of Ya'qub, amongst the brothers of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, that they felt a sort of discrimination between them and Yusuf and his brother Benjamin.
Was this feeling of them true?
It might be true in some levels, but not in a bad level, okay? Because we believe that the prophets are sinless and they are infallible. It was not in the level that sort of violate the regular
rights of the others.
The rights of the others. Yet he was showing his love more to his with regard to Yusuf alayhi salam, more rather than the other his children. Okay?
Isn't it regarded as discrimination?
But it was a sort of discrimination, and I will talk about this a little bit. That sometimes, okay, loving children or loving one of the children more than the others is permissible. Okay, for example, if one of the children is pious than the others, okay, is more pious than the others, it is okay, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaqul and says, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Okay, so we can love for example.
So again, the reason for this love is cut from Quran.
Yes. Okay, he loved for example, Yusuf more than them, but showing this love, okay, and letting this love interfere in one's action, okay, it is not befitting. Okay, so they saw this sorts of some levels of discrimination, and it led to, for example, having bad ideas about their brother. Okay, so even though it might not be haram, okay, but it has its consequences, and it led to they went and they took their brothers and tried to kill him, okay, or tried to get rid of him. So it has its own consequences, even though it might not be haram in some levels. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the brothers of Yusuf felt this way, and it was in some levels, as I said, it was true, and it was actually, it happened at that time. This feeling was true in some levels.
But as you said, there's kind of, let's say, I don't know, can I call it a divine discrimination that we can have, and we are permitted based on Quranic teachings?
Actually, I said that it is not permitted. It is not permissible to show this.
I don't mean that negative aspect of it, because Yusuf was more pious than the others.
Yeah. So loving the more pious one, okay, is permitted. Yet it is not justified that one bring this in action. Okay, you should not act your children. There is a tradition from the Holy Prophet. Let me recite this.
Yeah.
It says, this tradition says, "An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam nadhara ila rajulin lahu ibnan." The Holy Prophet looked at a person who had two children or two boys. فَقَبَّلَ أَحَدَهُمَا وَتَرَكَ الْآخَرَ. This person kissed one of his children or one of his children, one of his boys, and did not kiss the other one. فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَهَلَّا سَوَّيْتَ بَيْنَهُمَا. Why didn't you treat them equally? So Allah, the Holy Prophet sort of objects this sort of action. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, اعدلوا بين أولادكم كما تحبون أن يعدلوا بينكم أن يعدلوا بينكم. Try to treat your children equally, okay, and with a sort of fair treatment.
Yeah.
Just
As you like to be treated.
You like to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very important issue, as a crucial issue, and it will, if it's not observed, this not having discrimination between children, it will lead to many problems in the family between the children, and even more than that.
So the last point that we just understood was not to discriminate between our children, and is, I think, one of the important factors that should be considered. But concerning the point that Nakramakum indallah atqakum means that we are allowed to, in fact, respect those who are more pious. And this was a very good and interesting point that I just understood from the explanation of Sheikh Qasim, that though Prophet Yaqub tried not to discriminate between his children, but he loved Yusuf a bit more because of his being pious rather than wanting to be discriminating among them. Inshallah, we shall continue our discussion with the points, let's say, training points that we need to know based on Quranic teachings after a short break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Quran and Today's Life, and our discussion concerning training points that we take from Quranic teachings, more specifically in the training process of, in fact, children. Sheikh Qasim, the last question that I posed, and I was waiting to receive your scholarly information in that regard, was concerning the ethical point and, let's say, training points that we may understand from the chapter of Luqman. Chapter of Luqman is one of the famous chapters of the Quran that has lots of, training points. I want to ask you, can you give us a gist of those points which is very useful for the parents concerning the upbringing of their children?
All right. I think inshallah, I will talk about the chapter of Luqman, inshallah, more in the coming sessions. But for this session, I will just refer to these verses, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can cover the...
So we start to see
okay.
until...
So let me just read you these beautiful verses, and then inshallah, if we have more time, inshallah, I will go to the explanation of these points and the points that could be driven from these verses, these beautiful verses. Surah Luqman, as you said, from the verse 13, number 13, for about maybe 4 or 5 verses, it starts talking about training issues and training pointers that Luqman had with his son. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about these issues and the advices that Hadrat Luqman gave to his son. I will not talk about the advices a lot because because this is not our discussion that what advices were those advices. But inshallah, in the form of those advices and how should we advise our children, because this is our discussion, how to advise our children and how the advice should be, and what forms of advising is the best forms. Okay, I will talk about these points a little bit, inshallah, the next session. But for now, I just want to recite the translation of this verse and the ayat.
Yeah.
These ayat.
By advice, can we say that our advices can be practical advices? Our actions are advices. Is it the point that Quran wants to say here?
This is not just the actions. Inshallah, we will talk about that what kinds of advices were those advices that Luqman had with his child or with his boy. And practical and verbal advices he had. Inshallah, we will talk about that later on. And just to read the verses and the translation of the verses,
please.
so that we can be ready to, inshallah, to understand these verses better. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Surah Luqman, verse number 13. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Remember when Luqman counseled his son, O son, do not associate anyone with God. To associate others with God is a grievous wrong and injustice. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ وَحَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالَهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ وَإِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. We have committed and advised man about his parents. His mother carries him in her womb in weakness and debility, weaning him in 2 years, so he should be grateful to me and his parents. To me is the journeying back. وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَنْ تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. If they try to force you to associate with me that of which you have no knowledge, do not obey them.
So among the important points that were in fact mentioned here were not to associate anyone with God. In fact, in worshipping Allah, we should consider Allah as the unique creator. And I have plenty of questions in this regard, and one of the, let's say, important of them is that can we in fact make devices for our child or children while they are in the early ages or not? And this can be, I think, a good subject for our next discussion. Since we are at the last moments of this.
So I put the translation here, inshallah, and inshallah, the
we shall
respective viewers, they themselves go to these verses. I just for tayammun and for tabarruk, I recited these verses, and inshallah, our
again,
respective
just to
viewers
open the
go
Quran and to be blessed with the, in fact, watching of the pages of the Quran. It's a good suggestion that you just presented, that our respected viewers can refer to these verses of chapter of Luqman, and it would be a good preparation for our next discussion, inshallah. Thanks again for your accepting our invitation to this show, and you, the respected viewers, for following this program to the end. Once again, I invite you to join our program with our next discussion, which is the continuation of the current discussion, that is training points that we can catch from Quran, more specifically with regard to our children and the chapter of Luqman. Till our next show, have a very good time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.